Hello, audience, and welcome to another fascinating fantasy film deep dive here on the channel, where just like last time, we're going to be looking at another franchise from our childhoods that somehow is still getting entries put into it. Now, this is about Scorpion King, the Book of Souls, and which Scorpion King movie do you think this is? Is it the second one, the third, the fourth? No, once again, just like Dragonheart before it, this is the fifth entry within the Scorpion King franchise, released in 2018. Good lord. And this was pointed out to me and will never not be funny. That means the Scorpion King franchise, the spin-off series from The Mummy, is technically more successful than the Dark universe that was attempted. That's just delicious to me. And I'm collaborating in this video with AmandaTheJedi, one of my favorite YouTubers on the entire platform. If you haven't checked out her channel, absolutely do so. She's going to be handling the climax of the film at the end, but don't worry, buckaroos. Buckle up and strap in, because I'm gonna get you there. That came out weird. Let's address a very muscular elephant in the room. No, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is not still showing up for this latest Scorpion King entry, because of course he's not. Though if I had to bet, I would say a lot of us probably firmly associate Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with the role of the Scorpion King, not only because was it so early on in his career, but he did a surprisingly charismatic job. I think is what kind of set the tone for him for many, many years afterward as an actor. And yeah, the original Scorpion King movie's not great, but it's fun camp, and watching that fun camp continue to be milked to this day is endearing. Let's go ahead and talk about Book of Souls, the fifth Scorpion King movie. And as the title implies, it's about as cliche as you can get. If Dragonheart 5 was actually entertaining because of just how weird it got, I genuinely really liked that movie. People thought I was being like tongue-in-cheek. No, that's one of the best fantasy films I watched of like recent memory. It's hilarious. And Cursed was just a train wreck. Scorpion King 5 to me is an absolutely amazing study in people checking boxes and giving enough effort to satisfy a studio. That's what this entire movie comes across as well as stealing many ideas and leaning extraordinarily heavily into tropes.
And side boob. Get ready for gratuitous amounts of this movie relying on PG-13 side boob.
And so if you would like just a textbook beat-for-beat blueprint of what it looks like when Hollywood phones it in, Scorpion King 5 seems to be the way to go. The titular role of Scorpion King is played by Zach McGowan, who does his best to try and fill the massive shoes left behind by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Obviously, he does not live up to it, but I do not mean to insult him as an actor. He's actually had a pretty interesting career appearing in stuff like Terminator Salvation and Shameless, and he does the best he can with the very bland material he's given here. He does not fill the screen in the same way that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson does. Of course, he feels more like Dwindle the Stone Jackson. That feels more appropriate somehow. But we need to talk about the most famous actor to actually be in this movie, and that is Peter Mensah, who plays the antagonist. You will probably recognize Peter Mensah for his roles in things like 300 or Avatar. He's been around for quite some time, and he's always able to provide a gravitas that movies like this very much so rely on. He's that guy. And Peter Mensah, I actually really enjoy seeing here as well. He's just like, I don't know, a good time. But there's actually something AmandaTheJedi, in doing her research for helping me in this video, came across that she's gonna get to at the end. Fascinating little Easter egg for Hollywood conspiracy theorists out there. But okay, let's go ahead and talk about Scorpion King 5, Book of Souls, or as I like to call it, Scorpion King 5. Let's just take everything else from what's known or other successful franchises. The opening of this movie is a masterclass in cliche fantasy filmmaking. Of course, you called it, put your money down and reap the reward. You get an opening monologue over a brief history to establish world building, because Lord of the Ring do it, so we do it here too. Except what these movies always fail to recapture is the fact that the Lord of the Rings, in a very brief amount of time, does an insane amount of establishing for Middle Earth and the actual environment our characters will be, interacting with, exploring through. Instead, what we get here is a brief history of there was once evil king before time of even pharaoh. He make deal with Anubis for super sword. that come with cost. Okay, dead now sword forgotten about. And of course, even the writing for this voiceover is pretty poor, to the point where it's saying things like, oh, something has to exist to stop this sword, right, guys? I'm paraphrasing, but like along those lines. Then we get the oh-so stake-setting scene where we're introduced to our antagonists, and immediately they are breaking into an ancient tomb with a coffin in there, snakes all over it, because snakes in Egyptian tombs, I guess, and the main antagonist enters the room with his two female cronies. We have Nebzarek, Minofer, and Kensa. But they enter this tomb and immediately open the coffin. The female magical chick with the hair of just wow, or I never have seen that before, honestly. Puts her hands on the tombs, ignoring the snakes, and there's a flashes of violence in the future. She tells Nebzarek, hey, this is gonna come with a high cost. And he responds, power is never given, it's taken. So he doesn't address her concern whatsoever, which I find kind of funny. She's like, hey, if you put your hand in there, it could fall off. And he's like, you know, power is something that needs to be taken. Yeah, but your hand would... What? I get what they were going for, but to me that line does not convey the intent written. The intent written is supposed to be like, he's willing to make sacrifices for power, but all he's saying is that he's here to take power, not be given it, but that doesn't address the possible ramification. Whatever. And then from there, after Nebzarek pulls the sword from a dry ice container because we're getting set up of evil sword and then immediately antagonist gets it, we get cut back to voiceover because quality. But this subsequent voiceover lets us know that Nebzarek was an amazing conqueror who used brutality and blood to get all the vague lands he wanted to. So he did, with glowing orange eyes in front of just a fabulous green screen. But there was one enemy he could not find, and that would be the Scorpion King, because the Scorpion King is the heir to the throne of the people who beat his people long ago, and so he wants to find the last Scorpion King. I have questions. I have questions. Can I, real quick, right over right here. If the Scorpion King's not playing a role at all in his conquest, why does he even really care? It seems like this person hasn't been a factor for vague amount of time, if ever, and he's just succeeding in conquering all the lands, but there's this one person out there who is the heir to the throne of something that we don't know the established stakes for, so could this throne have a lot of power? Sure. Could it also just be like a symbolic throne that means nothing? Also kind of yes, but we do get it implied that through this power in his mind he's being corrupted and being driven mad, and he's becoming obsessed with the Scorpion King in front of this fabulous horrible green screen, and then he sends off a bird to go find the Scorpion King. Yes, really. And then cut to Scorpion King. Of course, Dwindle the Stone Jackson is doing his best here. He's a blacksmith in a small town, it looks like, and he's very shirtless and very muscly right away. The movie attempts very hard to try and get you to care about some characters in this village in about 1.5 seconds. Really, all the bonding you get with these villagers is them waving at a distance like this, so hi! You like me now. You want to hit that like and subscribe button, right? You want to do that because I waved. I did the thing. We're friends. We're friends. We see there's like nice people who enjoy him as the blacksmith, and he goes off to go hunt, and while he's gone, suspicious bird flying toward village and riders coming this way. Oh my god! Evil warrior chick, Kensa. She's leading this party, and she jumps down from her horse and says, "Where's the Scorpion King?" Because I guess the bird told her he was here somehow. But of course, the one guy who kind of like waved at the Scorpion King in the distance nicely is the one who like stands up the most, and his family gets like literally, like they're immediately the ones who get targeted and beaten. So the Scorpion King, getting suspicious because of the bird, shows back up to save the day. But by the time he's back, the place is on fire and everyone's been round up, and evil people are eviling and lighting it all on fire. So just as friendly friend man is about to be killed, Matthias, aka Scorpion King, comes out and says, "Nay, I am here, fight me!" And so evil warrior woman sends all of her henchmen at him. Note, I don't mean to be this guy. I took a college class on stage combat, and it was a very interesting thing to learn about. And one of the things you learn about in stage combat, where you have to perform it live in front of people without editing, is the less you make it clear you're projecting your swing, like coming in like this, usually the better it's going to end up looking. So you need to get the training down so that you don't have to overly project for the person you're fighting to block it effectively, so it actually looks kind of good, but also be projecting enough for them to see it coming and block throughout the pattern, the dance you're choreographing together. Everyone in this scene is swinging at the Scorpion King with arm rigidly out, coming in like a over the top swing down like ha! And there's so many cuts and so much slow motion. And I'm not one of these people who says every fight scene needs to be this long, drawn out single take. No, occasionally a little bit of shaky cam works, a little bit of slow-mo can enhance some stuff. No, none of it here looks good. They get some mediocre action hits and they do all these things to try to make them look epic, but it's just not. It's just not there. But then Matthias, aka Scorpion King, gets Boromired. And I mean, like, if you put these side by side, he gets flat out Boromired. They didn't even really try to do anything different from it. But my question is, if there were archers there the whole time, why send a bunch of swordsmen at him? Why not just be like, and shoot? Because action sequence. Okay, I can take that. But he's riddled with arrows, and people watch him as he falls to the ground. Oh no, there's so many arrows in my body. He breaks a few off and keeps fighting, but of course, he's weakened, more arrows, and evil warrior chick keeps doing mouth things. That sounds weird. But she keeps looking at him and doing like... It's upsetting. It's kind of upsetting. But then, to really seal home how evil Kinsa is, she murders a child in front of him. Scorpion King's like, don't, take me! And she's like, I'll take both. And then she murders the child and the rest of the village and puts him in a jail cell they have, and they go on off. And then one of the most confusing sequences I have witnessed in a movie happens, where he's being taken under guard in this jail cell. Kensha, evil warrior woman, does like a few mocking things to him and leaves. And then he's apparently left at night with a couple guards, and then good magic warrior woman 2-in-1 for the good side shows up to help him break free, kills his guards, takes his jail cell and rides off, and then has a magical circle ceremony where scorpions come out of the ground and sting him back to health because Scorpion King. After his little healing ritual, though, we then cut back to Nebzarek at his camp, where he is sitting with Magical Woman actually in his lap. Oh, they have a little relation? I didn't know they were a couple. But Kinsa returns and says, hey, the Scorpion King has escaped. Sorry. And the God King, as he has proclaimed himself, is upset at this news, making her kneel and saying he will not have his vengeance until he plunges Anubis's fang into the Scorpion King's heart. Cut back to Scorpion King because many scenes in this movie are shockingly short. We find out the woman who saved him name is TALA, and the Scorpion King is completely naked, and she brings him clothes from a graveyard. So this movie is actually pretty even in its objectification, and I appreciate that. The scene boils down to TALA telling him, I'm a warrior of Nubia, and I need you, the Scorpion King, a walking demigod, to come back and help stop this reign of terror. The Scorpion King does not put on the clothes for a surprisingly long amount of time and says, no, I'm a blacksmith. I'm not who you think I am. Leave me alone. And this starts getting into the highlight of the cliches, because the dialogue here plays out exactly as you'd think, with hesitant hero not wanting to take up mantle and someone trying to convince him to do so. He does the, I'm not who you think I am, I'm just a blacksmith. She goes back with the appeal of like, oh, my father was this person who died to the evil reign, you must come back. And then he's kind of like, oh, you've got the wrong person. No, it's exactly what you would think. I will add in some praise. I'm not gonna ever be just entirely negative. The actress behind TALA I'm actually enjoying. She delivers these lines the best I think they possibly could be delivered. So TALA is a princess, and she says, look, you have your strength and you have me, as the Scorpion King finally stands up and starts putting on pants. I've seen too much of this man's butt. And the scene finishes off with establishment of stakes for an actual objective, to the point where Matthias, Scorpion King, actually says, you're questing. I don't do quests. And she asks why, and he says because they're harder and someone always dies. At least the movie is showing some self-awareness, but this quest is essentially to go find the Book of the Souls, which apparently contains a secret to defeat the sword Nebzarek is wielding. But she convinces him to come along when she says, look, that woman who killed that child in front of you works for Nebzarek. You'll be able to kill her and get your revenge if you help me save my Nubian people. You just gotta, we have a similar objective. Fine, we can do it. And he's like, all right, go with you. Except he doesn't actually say that. They just kind of imply it, and then there's a bird call that's a transition into back to Nebzarek, because again, there's not very many long scenes in this movie. And the greatest piece of comedy unfurls in this film, because the bird call was used as transition to show us that the bird has returned to the magical woman, and instead of like doing some telepathic communication or learning what the bird saw, which apparently he was spying on the Scorpion King and Tala through like just like magic, the bird squawks at her. Like, it's actually her looking at the bird going like, oh, yeah, as the bird's going, and she's like, yes, oh yeah. I just love that choice. That creative choice shows me someone on set was having a really good time. But essentially this scene just happens to show us that Nebzarek finds out what their plot is to go get the Book of Souls. So now he sends off his henchmen to stop them. Cut back to Scorpion King and Tala. They are going through a desert. They go into some lands that are owned by another people. They're like, we should go around and avoid this, but before they can, the people emerge out covered in sand colors that match around them, and they are now taken prisoner. Scorpion King and Tala are put in cage. Tala is threatened with the R word, because of course she is. Dwindle the Stone Jackson also makes a joke to the tribe leader Uruk about selling Tala to him for some wine and pigs, which just like, you, dude. And the Scorpion King says, hey, if I can complete a challenge where I beat you and your best, you must let us go. And the leader of this tribe, who is cliche leader of more primitive tribe than the rest, says, fine, sure, we will do this. And it's a very clear setup for something later on that you'll probably figure out in a minute. Scorpion King is then given a head start where these hunters will then follow him. He is unarmed, they have bows, arrows, and weapons. Scorpion King uses like some dig it in the mud, getting predator kind of style combat to overcome them. He could have killed these people, but he does not, despite them being violent towards him and trying to kill him and threatening his companion. And at the end, despite the threat of the R word and everything, there's this like, you could have killed me and my men, but you overcame us and didn't. You're honorable. We like you. And like there's this camaraderie, and it's like, I'm sorry, but I would not feel the same way in that moment. And guess what? Now he has these group of peoples that can help him possibly in the future. Oh, like what's this a setup for? Who could possibly know? We then are cut to show warrior woman henchmen leading a small party of people on horseback chasing them down. What's interesting though is it's established that Nebzarek has like tens of thousands of troops, but he's sending like less than 20 people to deal with this person who's cliche villain flaw, because he should watch my henchman training video. And then the movie writes itself in a way that actively hurts immersion. This is actually something I want to take special attention to, because from a writing angle, don't ever do this. They are getting close to the portal that's going to be able to take them to the separate realm where the Book of Souls is kept. And apparently, once every 3 years, this portal is open here. Well, that just happens to be tonight. Why would you write that you're in control of all magical things, because spoiler alert, magic's not real, and you decide to put this in there, which for anyone with even like 2 brain cells is just gonna be like, don't do that. We then actually have a clarification scene that I do want to commend the movie for having, despite just shooting itself in the foot. It is established why Tala is the person who's come to find him and do all this. Her father, the king of the Nubians, was actually the guardian of this book. So it does make Scorpion King 5 canonical sense that she would be the one who sets off to find the Scorpion King and be like, hey, you need to be the person to find this book to stop this evil warlord. So that is something I can at least appreciate on that level for this movie. They ride off with more heroic trumpet music and finally arrive at this gateway. It is covered in symbols. Lots of, neat little symbol-y stuff. But the movie immediately undoes all of that good faith it just built up, because then it turns into the Da Vinci Code. They roll up to the portal they're trying to get to, and it's covered in these symbols. Tala takes this staff and is like, there's a puzzle we have to figure out to open the portal. And they are kind of looking at it, and they get further away, and they look at the symbols. And despite Tala being the one who is brought up in this culture and was told all these legends, of course, she's not the one who figures it out. Scorpion King is like, oh, you must do this and do that and blah, blah, blah. They open the portal. Why couldn't you give Tala that? It's not been established that Scorpion King is particularly smart at all, and somehow he's the one who's gonna, like, Tom Hanks Da Vinci Code this. Tala's the one who's been smart so far. She's the one who was, like, using magic and medicine and all this stuff. But the portal opens, she says it won't be open long, so they run towards it, then stop right in front of it and have a conversation, and then go inside and get ready for boobage. Boobies. It's gonna be a lot of this going on in a second here. Once through the portal, they are in a little underground tomb because Egypt set Scorpion King thing sand. You gotta do that. That's required. And they're looking about. Okay, physics. I know in Scorpion King I shouldn't complain about physics, but let me have a moment here. It's shown sand is constantly pouring in. This isn't that big a tomb. Like, it's the size of, like, I'd say, reasonably looking at it, like, 2-bedroom apartment. Wouldn't it fill up? Wouldn't the sand fill it even if it's just, like, it's been here for, like, years and years and years, right? Like, they established that. It opens once every 3 years, so we can assume this has been here for at least 3 years. And it's being constantly poured in with sand. But, you know what? I get it. Aesthetics. And this is where the movie starts to really get into the stealing territory. You know the popular rock monster character Korg, voiced by the wonderful, amazingly talented Taika Waititi. He's a fan favorite for the MCU now, and if you were gonna make a movie along those lines, wouldn't you want one too? Well, Scorpion King decided, yes. I could completely forgive that, because this is Scorpion King 5 and I wouldn't really care. Except that it doesn't do it well, and I don't mean that, well, I do mean that in a kind of mean way. Because Korg works because he's just goofy, and he's extremely charming in his, like, simple yet practical appeal, and there's nothing really wrong with him.
Piss off, ghost!
This gnome creature they have a brief fight with, and then it's called off to stop, and its character is quickly established as stupid, and the comedy is derived from the stupid, rather than Korg's, like, kind of charming simplicity. You see the difference there? And so it's just the worst version, which obviously I should be expecting here, but, like, can you do me a little bit better than that, please? But this creature is also established to be indestructible and afraid of fire. But the person who called it off is the sorceress of the temple. Do you remember how I said get ready for some boobage? It gets pretty booby in here because this is her costume for the movie. She makes uncomfortable amounts of eye contact with everybody, and as someone who generally doesn't like that much eye contact, please, for the love of God, stop. And she doesn't respond enough, like which is a very typical thing for characters of this kind, where people will say things, they don't really respond, so people say more things as part of their, like, mysticism. It's just kind of more awkward because they don't shoot it extremely well, so it's just more of like. But they call her bodyguard a thing, which is rude, and he's like, hey, I'm a golem. That's rude. I'm a person. Oh, and the joke about selling the Nubian woman for wine comes back here because Tala looks at the Scorpion King and goes, I bet you wouldn't sell her for some wine. This movie really liked that joke. There's then some mystical thing about how the text is only uncovered in the blue light of the moon, and oh, why is she wearing such scanty clothing? Scorpion King puts it together, and it's the body of the text is only unveiled in the blue. Oh, so yes, the reason that they justified it, the reason she's so close to naked is because her body, when it's put into the light, unveils the Book of the Soul stuff. So she is the scroll they've been looking for. Who could have seen that coming? Oh my God. I have so many things to say and questions. So they make this woman get down to her metal bikini and stand in the moonlight, where all these little glyphs all over her body are revealed and then talked about by our protagonist. And she's like, yes, these are the names of all the souls. So there has been this guy, this warlord, just savagely murdering people, and the fact that this sword was used by previous king for similar reason. Will she eventually just be completely coded? She already kinda is. I don't like the person's body being used for the text because you can't add pages to a body. I mean, I guess you can. She could just get bigger. Is that a part of it? Are they just happening to find her at the moment where she's, like, normal sized? It's also worth note that during this whole sequence, the Scorpion King and this woman make obscene amounts of eye contact, not blinking, and it's trying to set up sexual tension. Are we gonna try and do the love thing? I guess we are now, okay. We then cut to the sequence where the people who with sand all over their skins, they can hide in the desert, have an encounter with the evil people. And instead of like having the "you're honorable" ending that the Scorpion King had with them, they just turn them away, and the evil people are like, "Drat, we have to go around now because we only brought 20 people and we can't fight this tribe because they'll massacre us." We then cut back to the Scorpion King with Amina, the sorceress woman, and TALA, where the sorceress woman is saying, hey, if we want to figure out how to break this curse and solve these problems, the knowledge has been made how to do it, and we need to go back to the tomb where the sword was first taken from. Neat. We also have the sorceress Amina and the Scorpion King having a sultry sit-down where Amina talks about how she's spent her whole life in this other reality tomb. She's never seen the real world. She'd love to be shown the Scorpion King's world, oh well and truly, setting up their romance through her inexperience to knowing anyone aside from this golem. Okay. They're like, okay, we should all leave, but the golem's like, no! Amina has to stay here at all costs. He won't let her leave. But to overcome this, they try to have a scene where they genuinely are like, you'll feel bad for the golem character because we've established through brilliant character work, he's terrified of fire. So they light a fire between Amina and the golem, and they just leave. They really try and play it off like you feel horrible for the golem character, but like, it's just weird. Why? It just feels so contrived. But they leave through the portal and they're trying to go towards this place. It turns out there's only 2 exits from the valley, and the bad guys have split up to make sure that they cannot successfully leave this valley. They go one direction, and there's a scene on the beach where the sorceress and the Scorpion King have more sexual tension. Tala's kind of relegated at this point to just being in the background, and I'm not very emotionally invested in any character here, but Tala's been pretty great. The actress is definitely the best performance in my opinion, so seeing her just get sidelined for mostly naked sorceress cliche, it just bothered me like quite a bit. I did not like that at all. But the bad guys arrive, and it's time for an action sequence where our Nubian Queen Tala and the Scorpion King do their best to fight 10 or so, because the bad guys have been split up, horsemen who are charging them. We don't have main bad guy chick, but another guy who was there at the beginning when the child was murdered is leading this group. And it's a very, once again, I can only say awkward fight scene where the guys come in on horseback, and there's some somewhat decent cuts in there. 0 blood, of course, despite some very obviously blood should be flying around cuts going on. But they're fighting, and the Scorpion King is absolutely kicking ass. But the Scorpion King desperately at one point goes, Tala! Get Amina out of here! And right as Tala's running off to do so, we hear the golem's voice being like, Amina! And he's running down the beach in his giant ass. By the way, it's established he's indestructible. Like, we know that for sure, except for fire, so they're by a beach. Okay, fight's over. They win. They have an indestructible golem on their side. But yeah, so he's there too. It's just a weird sequence of events. And Amina just sits up from the grass, Tala coming to help her, and also, I guess, the golem now, despite no immediate threat being established for her. Why did Tala need to suddenly go help her get out of the grass? But the Scorpion King kills the one guy who was there when the child was murdered, so yay? And then we get some more comedy with the golem, where he's like, the Akkadian, which is the type of people the Scorpion King is, stole you. And Amina's like, no, I left with him willingly. And then the golem just decides to come with them, because apparently that was an option the entire time. But after the Scorpion King was like, help Amina, Tala didn't do anything. She was just once again sidelined awkwardly, and it's like, why are you doing this to the best character of the movie so far? We then get an elongated travel montage where the good guys show up to a town where they're going to try and get in a boat so they can go to the tomb they need to get to. Well, in the town, though, it turns out the other half of the bad guys are already there. Scorpion King tells everyone to go try and get the boat while he confronts them. And of course, Evil Warrior Woman is there. We then get probably the best action sequence of the movie. It's still very jumpy, but it incorporates some like multi-level running on rooftop stuff that shows a level of creativity that just hasn't been here before. So I genuinely appreciate the level of effort that was put on display here. And the town itself doesn't look terrible. But some fighting happens, bad guys are beaten, a surprising number of them are taken out. It feels like, oh, maybe he's taken out enough to just turn around and fight bad woman at this point, but I guess not, because he runs off the rooftops and jumps onto the boat and they sail away from the town, victorious once again. And then a very big issue with communication comes up for me. We cut to the main bad guy going through an obviously defeated clan and going up to their leader. Turns out it's the Nubian clan, and he kills the current king, which is Tala's brother. Earlier it was established that whenever someone's soul goes into the sword, Amina knows their death and is like aware of them and their life. So she then feels Tala's brother die and tells her. This raises a couple big issues for the movie, because weirdly it's like proposition to Tala that she can just leave because her people are defeated, but that's not what her character's been established to be at all. Yes, she's doing this for her people, but she also wants revenge for her father. So the fact that the main antagonist just killed her brother means obviously she's still on this path. In addition to that, we as the viewer now have far more investment as the audience for Tala to go up against the main antagonist at the end, rather than the Scorpion King. Think about it. The Scorpion King didn't even go on this journey to fight the main warlord. He doesn't care about him. He's purely here for the woman that killed the kid. Yes, there's like the main warlord sent her, but he didn't care knowing that until he was promised revenge specifically on that woman. Tala has now had her father and brother die at the hands of this person. She's a warrior princess. She is obviously narratively more suited to go down the path to fight the main antagonist. But as you've probably noticed in this movie, now that other sorceress chick is here with her boobies out, Tala's not really being given much to do, to the point where in fight scenes they're just relegating her to the sideline or having a whole action sequence in the town despite her being a magical warrior where she's just tasked with protecting Amina.
Despite the golem already being there, very capable of protecting Amina.
And so she's just being pushed out. This movie literally pushes out the most well set up and motivated character it has, 'cause sexy woman and muscle man. From a writing standpoint, this is one of the harshest criticisms I think I've ever given a movie ever. I'm gonna say this is an absolute fundamental failure to understand any form of narrative building for the audience. Because I'm not saying you had to make Tala the person at the end to fight the main antagonist. You could have given the Scorpion King some motivations to match hers. Or you could have lessened hers or not reinforced them as much. But this movie reinforces Tala's motivations while continuing to fail to give the Scorpion King any to really care about this main antagonist. It feels like the warrior woman, who's been far more actively involved in this hunt for the Scorpion King, feels like the proper fit to him. But how do you think this movie's going to end? But they get to the shore they're going to, get off the boat, and arrive at the temple the sword was originally taken from, and read about the full history of the sword, where the king, who was originally the wielder, was slowly driven mad by the souls in his head. In addition to that, one of his royal concubines gave birth to a daughter, who turned out to be the Book of the Souls, and Anubis told the king to break the curse and save himself from the madness, he must kill his own daughter. A powerful mage apparently stole away the girl and saved her, and the king ended up killing himself. Obviously, this means Amina is the king's daughter, which is presented as this big twist, but we don't really have any connection to this king, and it hasn't been relevant since the first opening monologue, so it's like, neat is my reaction. And Amina's really old and immortal, I guess. Cool. But from what we know now, for the souls to be freed, Amina must be killed by the sword of Anubis to end the curse. We then get one of the most rapid propulsions into a conclusion I have ever come across in a movie. So they're in this temple and suddenly poison darts start hitting our crew, and they are now being knocked unconscious by the main antagonist woman and her party to be taken prisoner and taken back to the warlord.
And I know what you're thinking. Why isn't the golem just stepping up to accidentally mark these fools who are trying to use darts when he's made of clay? And it's been explicitly stated he's unstoppable and you cannot kill him in a fight without anything but fire. That's a really good question. It's not addressed at all. They're just taken prisoner.
As they're being taken back to the warlord, the people who have respect for Scorpion King but don't like Warlord's people see them being walked as prisoners. Oh, I wonder what this is going to be later on. I wonder what's going to happen here. What's going to happen? How are they going to play a role in the final? But they are taken back to Warlord's main camp, and despite him being established to have tens of thousands of soldiers, he's shown to have like 100 guys around him. Anyway, Scorpion King is chained to rocks while everyone else is put in cages. The warlord wants to show how mighty he is, so he goes, "We will fight in actual warriors combat." Plus Scorpion King is weak and wounded, so I'll be able to kick his ass. I'm a warrior, so I'm gonna have a final fight with him. And then to prove a point, he takes his magic sword and slices along Scorpion King's rib, putting blood into the sand. It's also shown that a lot of the Nubian people are here as prisoners as well, and ready to fight within the cages, and Tala's like communicating with them because the guards are just letting all the prisoners talk amongst themselves. Okay. Sorceress, though, is being taken in front of Warlord, where he's sitting watching her being examined by his magical woman, and I have to point this out. I kid you not. They made her metal underwear even smaller. I had to go back and double check. But apparently somewhere along the road, someone decided the metal bra that the sorceress was wearing was too covering, so they shrunk it down to essentially just cover nipples.
Hey, it's me, your friendly neighborhood idiot, Amanda the Jedi, here to deliver this epic finisher. That's right, Daniel can't even have the conclusion in his own video, suck it. So they're all captured. Nebby does what all baddies do and underestimates our Scorpion King and decides he can't kill him until he wakes up. And his arrogance is gonna get him messed up because the Scorpion King's blood attracts the scorpions to sting him back to life. So now you're all in trouble. But just before that, there's a scene where they go over the living book and it's so gross. Also, did they just have her dressed up like this for one scene for more maximum titty? Because she's just wearing something completely different immediately after. And as the fight is breaking out, the sand guys show up again and decide to show our buff Bradley Cooper, Troy Baker knockoff some loyalty because he's the Scorpion King.
I have to actually cut in to point out what's going to happen in this clip I'm going to show because it's literally focusing on the wrong thing. This is the priestess dying, the evil priestess who's like had the bird. This is her being shot, and it's not in focus. So while editing this, I was like, oh my god, people aren't going to be able to tell. Back to Amanda, sorry.
Wow, I guess she didn't see that one coming. She's a priestess, not a seer. I just wanted to make that joke. And thus begins the epic battle between Nebzarek and our king. It's not that epic. But all the prisoners get freed, knockoff Korg starts launching bodies left and right, before he ends up toe-to-toe with Nebby. And then I notice something. Amina calls his name and then it pans over to her and she's like looking down even though he would be like up. But then he pulls the sword into his body to get it away from him and then falls back into the fire, and then it cuts back again to Amina looking down at him, which would now actually make sense because he's on the ground in a fire pit, but it's the same clip. It's like they didn't film a shot of her looking at him after calling his name, even though that scene didn't need to happen at all, and they were just kind of like, oh yeah, we'll just use the same clip back to back. Well, you know what they say, work with what you have, and they don't have much.
Something both Amanda and I forgot to cover because it happens so quickly and almost offhandedly in this movie. Evil Warrior Woman also dies in this sequence where basically Tala and Scorpion King team up to throw a knife into her back, but they couldn't even give Tala a solo kill at the end. She had to get a kill with Scorpion King. Cool.
So now it's all down to a fist fight. Nebzarek gets the upper hand, but as the king is being launched into a fiery pit, he manages to wrap his chain around Nebby's neck and yeets him into the flames like Free Willy. And even though they just met, this is the kind of movie that's gonna try to slam in a romance right at the end. And as he's stabbing her to destroy the sword and free the souls, they kiss.
Thank you for showing me your world.
Yeah, she got a real good look at it. And then she dissolves into a burst of light and sand? Because, like, it shows sand coming out of his hand after I don't know. I don't know, Daniel, say whatever you need to. I need a second.
We then have an end montage where Scorpion King gets to ride off into the desert, and then there's a voiceover that just provides, Scorpion King. And you might have noticed something here if you have any familiarity with the Rock movie that is titled The Scorpion King as well. This has, like, no connection to it, aside from a couple of references to peoples that are somewhat in the Rock movie. And apparently that's a general trend throughout the entire Scorpion King franchise. It's an entire franchise that has a few through-line names, but nothing else that's actually continually similar aside from like an Egyptian-esque setting and Anubis playing a role. And one other thing, every Scorpion King must have long black hair because that's the people's characteristic, I guess. Despite The Rock looking like this and Dwindle the Stone Jackson looking like this, they're the same people, you can tell, because of the hair. But okay, I promised you a little bit of a conspiracy theory, and Amanda's gonna take this over again.
So when Daniel and I were talking about this piece of cinema, he told me that it had an 80% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and I genuinely couldn't believe it. Why would 80% of critics give this a positive review? And then I went to look at it, and there aren't any critic reviews, not one. So that 80% was entirely comprised of audiences, which still seemed obscenely high, especially when audience ratings on every other site were significantly lower. So then I started looking at some of these reviews, and any 5-star rating that I clicked on was from an account that only reviewed this movie. Like there was some wave of movie watchers that felt so inspired by Scorpion King Book of Souls that they immediately ran out to make Rotten Tomatoes accounts and spread the love. Or the more realistic option is that they're all fake. I don't know if it was a director, an actor, or somebody from the studio itself, but somebody orchestrated a series of fake 5-star reviews for this movie. I sincerely doubt anybody actually paid for that, so I just like to imagine that like every couple months, somebody from behind the scenes just makes a handful of accounts to throw out some new 5-star reviews. And you know what? Most people still don't know this damn movie exists, so good job.
But anyway, everybody, thank you for tuning in to another dumpster full of burning raccoons here on the channel. Let me know what you think of Scorpion King 5 in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you've not already, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Please check out Amanda's channel as well. She does a lot of videos of detailed, intense breakdowns of movies that have really fun Easter eggs behind the scenes, and I cannot recommend it enough. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my latest high-tier